The streetlights flickered as the wind howled, a storm brewing on the horizon. I dribbled my basketball, the rhythmic thump echoing in the eerie silence. A flash of lightning split the sky, followed by a deafening crack of thunder. I panicked, my grip on the ball loosening. It bounced away, rolling into the encroaching darkness. I hesitated for a split second, the storm closing in. But my basketball was my prized possession, a gift from my dad. Therefore, I had to get it back. I sprinted after the ball, its orange glow barely visible in the fading light. The rain started, cold and heavy. I slipped and slid on the slick pavement, my eyes fixed on the bouncing ball. It led me down the street, away from the familiar comfort of my neighborhood, into a part of town I'd never been to before. The ball finally rolled to a stop in front of an old abandoned house. The windows were boarded up, the paint peeling, the yard overgrown with weeds. I hesitated, a shiver running down my spine. But the ball was right there, just out of reach. I crept onto the porch, the wood creaking beneath my feet. The front door hung open, a gaping maw in the gloom. I took a deep breath and stepped inside. The house was dark and musty, the air thick with the scent of decay. I fumbled for my phone, the flashlight beam cutting through the darkness. Cobwebs clung to the walls, the floorboards groaned with every step. I found my basketball in the living room, nestled in a pile of debris. I snatched it up, relief washing over me, but as I turned to leave, I heard a noise behind me. I spun around, my heart pounding. A figure stood in the doorway, silhouetted against the lightning-streaked sky. It was tall and thin, with long, spindly arms that hung down to its knees. Its head was a featureless oval, the only detail a pair of glowing red eyes that burned into mine. I screamed and ran, my legs pumping as fast as they could. I burst out of the house, the rain stinging my face. I didn't stop running until I reached my own front door, slamming it shut behind me. I collapsed on the floor, my chest heaving. I clutched my basketball tightly, its familiar texture a comfort in the aftermath of the terror. Needless to say, I never went back to that part of town, and I never lost my basketball again, but the memory of those glowing red eyes haunted my dreams for years to come. The path to Grandma's was familiar, a winding dirt road through the woods I'd walked countless times. But as the sky darkened and the first rumble of thunder echoed, a sense of unease crept over me. I quickened my pace, the basket of cookies I'd baked for Grandma swinging at my side. The wind started to pick up, whipping through the trees, sending leaves swirling around me like a frenzied dance. Raindrops began to fall, cold and heavy, splattering against my face. I pulled my shawl tighter around my shoulders, the chill seeping into my bones. Lightning flashed, illuminating the woods in an eerie glow. The thunder roared, louder and closer than before. I started to run, my heart pounding in my chest. The once familiar path now seemed treacherous, the shadows deepening with every flash of lightning. I stumbled, my foot catching on a tree root. I fell, the basket of cookies tumbling from my grasp. As I scrambled to my feet, I saw a figure standing in the middle of the path, illuminated by a flash of lightning. It was a woman, tall and thin, with long, flowing hair that whipped around her in the wind. Her skin was pale, almost translucent, and her eyes glowed with an unnatural light. She wore a white dress that billowed around her like a shroud. I froze, unable to move or speak. The woman smiled, a chilling smile that sent shivers down my spine. She beckoned me closer, her voice a soft, alluring whisper. I hesitated, my mind screaming at me to run, but something compelled me forward, a strange, irresistible force. I took a step, and then another, drawn towards the woman like a moth to a flame. As I drew closer, I could see the woman's eyes more clearly. They were black as night, filled with a malevolence that chilled me to the core. Her smile widened, revealing sharp, pointed teeth. I screamed and turned to run, but the woman was too fast. She grabbed my arm, her grip like iron. I struggled, but she held me tight, pulling me towards her. I could feel her breath on my face, cold and fetid. Her eyes burned into mine, filling me with the terror I'd never known. I knew then that I was lost, that this was the end. But just as the woman was about to claim me, a bolt of lightning struck a nearby tree, splitting it in two with a deafening crack. The woman screamed, her grip loosening. I wrenched free and ran, not daring to look back. I stumbled through the woods, the rain and wind lashing at me. I ran until my legs gave out, collapsing on the forest floor. I lay there for what seemed like an eternity, the storm just raging around me. When I finally gathered the strength to stand, the rain had stopped, and the sun was beginning to break through the clouds. I made my way back to Grandma's house, my clothes soaked, my body shaking with cold and fear. I never saw the woman in white again, but the memory of her haunted me for years to come. The woods, once a place of comfort and joy, now held a sinister secret, a reminder of the night I came face to face with evil. The office was eerily quiet, the hum of the air conditioner the only sound breaking the stillness. The storm outside raged, the wind rattling the windows, the thunder booming like distant cannon fire. I glanced at my watch, realizing with a sinking feeling that I was the only one left in the building. The lights flickered, plunging the office into momentary darkness. I jumped, my heart pounding. I reached for my phone, the screen illuminating my face as I checked for missed calls or messages. Nothing. I was truly alone. A sudden gust of wind slammed against the window, making it shudder. The rain hammered against the glass, the drops blurring my view of the city outside. I shivered, despite the warmth of the office. A sense of dread settled over me, like a heavy fog. I decided to make a run for it. Grabbing my coat and umbrella, I headed for the elevator, my footsteps echoing in the empty hallway. The elevator doors slid open, and I stepped inside, pressing the button for the ground floor. Then the elevator descended, the numbers on the display counting down. But instead of stopping at the ground floor, it just kept going down. The numbers continued to decrease, even into negative territory. Panic surged through me. I pressed the emergency stop button, but nothing happened. The elevator continued its descent, the darkness outside the doors growing deeper and more ominous. Finally, the elevator came to a stop with a jolt. The doors opened, revealing a dimly lit corridor I had never seen before. The air was cold and damp, with a faint smell of sulfur. I hesitated, my instincts screaming at me to stay inside the elevator, but curiosity and a desperate hope for escape propelled me forward. I stepped out into the corridor, the elevator doors closing behind me with a finality that sent a shiver down my spine. The corridor stretched out before me, seemingly endless. The walls were made of rough, unhewn stone, and the floor was slick with moisture. The only light came from flickering torches mounted on the walls, casting long, dancing shadows that seemed to twist and writhe with every flicker. I walked slowly, my footsteps echoing in the cavernous silence. Eventually the air grew colder, and the smell of sulfur stronger. I could feel a presence behind me, a malevolent force that watched me with unseen eyes. I started to run, my heart pounding in my chest. I rounded a corner, only to come face to face with a towering figure cloaked in darkness. Its eyes were glowing red, burning into mine. A scream caught in my throat as I realized that I was not alone in this subterranean nightmare. I turned and fled, my legs pumping as fast as they could. I ran until I collapsed, my lungs burning, my body racked with sobs. I lay there, curled up on the cold, damp floor, until the first rays of dawn filtered through a crack in the ceiling. I stumbled to my feet, my body aching, my mind reeling. I followed the corridor until I found a staircase that led upwards. I climbed, my legs shaking with exhaustion, until I reached a door. I pushed it open and emerged into the familiar lobby of my office building. The storm had passed, leaving behind a bright sunny morning. The elevator was waiting for me, its doors open invitingly. I stepped inside, pressing the button for my floor. The elevator ascended, its smooth, quiet operation a stark contrast to the nightmare I had just experienced. As I stepped out onto my floor, I couldn't help but look back at the elevator, a shiver running down my spine. I never told anyone about what I had seen in the depths of that building, but I never stayed late at the office again, and I never looked at elevators the same way.